Well, good morning. Welcome to the MAP Citizens Advisory Board meeting for January the 24th, 2019. We'll call the meeting to order. Item 2 on the agenda is you've been furnished with copies of the minutes of the previous meeting of December the 20th. Are there additions or corrections? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as submitted. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The minutes are approved. Item 3 is the Revenue and Expenditure Report. David.
Mr. Chairman, we have the Revenue and Expenditure Report for MAPS 3 for the period ending December 31st, 2018. On the revenue side for the month, we have $19,874. Fiscal year of $3,050,750. Total program revenues of $826,887,702. On the expenditure side for the month, $16,189,541. Fiscal year of $72,454,439, and total expenditures of $507,109,357. You also have the budget and obligations report in your packet, and it's there for your review. I'll try to answer any questions that you might have.
Michael, any questions?
I have no questions.
All right.
Move that we accept the report.
Been moved and seconded. We accept the report as submitted. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The report is received. We have item 4, a presentation on the convention center, David.
Right. We'd like to periodically bring to you presentations to show you the progress of various construction projects. And today we want to highlight the convention center. So Kevin Cook of Populous is here. He's our architect of record, and he's here to show us what's going on with the convention center.
Kevin, what does it mean to be architect of record?
It means our stamp and seal is on the drawings. So.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So good morning. Thank you for having me. It's been a few months since we presented to this group. So I do want to just say we do this type of construction update every month for our subcommittee typically, and so you guys don't get to see those always, and so this will look a little bit ahead of time, but we started this project in June, so it's been about 6 months, and I wanted to give you guys just a quick little update. I presented this to the subcommittee the other day too, but so far they've installed or poured 9,661 cubic yards of concrete for the project. We have over 619 tons of rebar already installed out there. We've got 45,000 linear feet of conduit. We have 72,600 cubic yards of new soil was brought in for the pad site. 270 tons of steel has been delivered, and we've only just started that, so that's going to be a number that grows significantly here shortly. We've installed 76 electrical floor boxes already out in the exhibit hall space, and today is a big day for our project. The largest steel girder beam is going to arrive this morning, hopefully, and it will be hung hopefully later today. It is 100 inches tall, which is about 10 feet-ish, and over 124,000 pounds. So progress is really moving, and it's really exciting to see, and you're actually starting to make out, looking at the image on the screen here, that corner of the building, you can kind of start to see that shape with all the steel that's out there. So just a quick update on things. There's some views to start with. This is January 4th, and I think you guys all remember the amount of snow you guys had here over the holiday time frame there. And the weather has been a big issue with this project. They've worked extremely hard dealing with the amount of rain and snow even here now where the ground has been very saturated and muddy. So they've been working through that and doing a really good job. But I just thought this was a really cool picture of a view we all didn't expect to see probably out there with the park and the hotel and the convention center. So this is the view on January 14th. And if you look up at our site, it's a little bit difficult. You can start to see the steel that was starting to happen there in the northwest corner, and then the concrete slab that's running down along Robinson Street. the back, or the farthest southern portion of that slab hadn't been poured yet in this image, but it was poured just last week. So just some series of shots. This was right before Thanksgiving. You can see the concrete core stair towers that were being erected. These two southern ones were only about 1 or 2 lifts tall. And as you work our way up here, this is December 6th. They start to grow a little bit more. You see more formwork happening. And you can see the concrete slab was poured up along the very northwest side of the site, the left side of the page here. As you moved closer to Christmas, the 20th of December, the towers kept growing, and this was a big day as well. This is where the middle slab of concrete was being poured. If you look between the 2 tallest concrete core towers, you can see fresh concrete had been poured just that night. They did the concrete pours late in the evening through the night. That way they can work on them all during the day, put saw cuts in and finish them off. This is January 4th. The site was pretty much shut down due to all the snow and the weather. And then this was just last week, January 15th. This was a day or two before. You can see they were getting really close to pouring this last slab of concrete on the southwest corner of the building along Robinson Street. And at this point, all of the tall concrete towers, which are for stairs and structural stability, have finished the height they're going to go, and they were taking formwork off of those. These are some shots. This is more towards the eastern end of our project. This is where the loading dock and the back of house spaces will be. Currently, they're still working in this area with a lot of utilities. They did all the utilities along Robinson Street first, the below grade, the foundations and everything. So here they are. They've worked their way from west to east on the project. And this is, again, November 21st. Mostly a lot of dirt work and foundation work was going on at this time. And it continued into December. And then close before Christmas, they were starting to get foundations closer to this end of the building. And most of the utilities were also being installed and in place now for the new Broadway Street that we stretched to the east to get our site to fit. January 4th with all the snow. And then this was just last week. The one thing you're noticing, there's a lot of dirt that's been moved and pushed around in a lot of these views. It was just so muddy, a lot of times it was easier to kind of scrape the top layer of mud off so they could move and work around spaces, and then they have to rework some of that dirt around. This is inside one of those tall stair concrete core towers that you guys see from the road. This is what's happening inside. They're actually locating and placing steel for exit stairs here. And this was December 11th, the day the first pieces of steel started to be erected, up there on the northwest corner. And then just a few days later, that's how much they'd went already from level 2 up to the 4th level. And then on January 7th, they started to tie into those concrete towers that were out there, so that those will help support the steel. And then that one in the middle that's a little farther there to the north, that one's just a single blade wall of concrete, and the steel will help reinforce it. Right now it's got cables holding it up that are reinforced into the ground, and once the steel gets around that all the way to the top, then they'll be able to release the cables, and that tower will be supported. This is January 9th. Underneath the steel, they're starting to put steel decking on level 2, and they're getting close to where they'll have level 2 ready to actually pour concrete on that here in a week or two. Back on December 6th, in this view, you're seeing the framework for the foundation for one of the passenger elevators that will go up along the side of this stair tower. You're also seeing a lot of utilities and conduit being put in the ground here, which will be ended up having concrete poured on top of it. This is the foundations for our freight and service elevators, and a couple of our change orders back that we agreed to add a third elevator in this core. So this used to only have one big freight and one service elevator, and then we added that second service elevator as one of our building enhancements. So this is a very large foundation pit for those 3 elevators. And then here's a view into that pit a few days later where the formwork had been removed and the concrete was already poured. This is the middle portion of the site where they had poured concrete, and those were tarps they had to put down due to the weather to keep the concrete warmer so that it could fully cure. And again, preparations for more slab on grade to be poured. This has the vapor barrier below it, the reinforcing that's in the slab, and utilities. And in the distance you can see they're pouring concrete as one of those concrete core towers was going up. They were pouring a level there. And this is what it looked like on the 20th of December after they had just finished pouring that through the night and finished it. One thing that's happened in a lot of these slabs and core slab on grade areas, they've left out pieces to where columns will go. So that's what you see there in front of you is a slab leave out for a column to be placed there, and then they'll come back once the columns are secure and finish pouring around those. And this is a pretty telling images. I've threw a couple in here just to show what the contractor's been working through. You know, mud, and more mud, and they're doing a really good job. They've taken a lot of care to try to work around everything and get through things, and working where they can and pumping water out of holes and in other areas just to keep progress moving as best they can. This was the most southern slab in the corner, southwest corner. This was putting the gravel down in that area and getting it prepped. And then that same area where they had placed the vapor barrier down and reinforcing was starting to get laid on top of it. This is one of the foundation grade beams, so this would have this would be the south exterior wall of the building. And they've been running this enormous beam. This picture doesn't really tell the whole story. That thing is about 5 feet by 5 feet wide, so that's it's a really big grade beam that has a lot of reinforcing in it and a lot of concrete. And then you start to see the cage, the rebar cages to help move that farther to the east. And then here's that same grade beam with it being poured and rebar sticking out so they can start attaching exterior wall to it. This is that same, another grade beam up along the north side. This would be the north exterior wall, and you can see here that entire trench is full of water, so that's one of the ones they had to pump and try to clean out so they can continue working over there. This is December 11th. This is the utility pit that the Veolia chilled and hot water connections will enter into our building and go up into our central plant where Veolia will have a boiler room. So this is about a 15-foot deep pit, concrete pit. So this is a little deceiving how big this hole is and how deep that is, but you can see a person standing next to it on the bottom right of that thing, of that formwork. And then there's that same utility pit with the formwork removed and the concrete in place. And then inside, these are the sleeves where Veolia will tie in through that. And they've already done this work. They've tied into these sleeves and built their lines out to 4th Street, so Veolia's connection to the building is in place and below ground now. And this is one of the floor boxes. We said there's 76 of these already installed. These are out in the exhibit hall. They'll have power and data devices installed in them. And so the contractor has already located those out in the site and secured their locations with concrete around the base of them. And then just a couple of quick views here, representations of the model or the rendering up in the top right and what was there on January 1st. Really start to see that shape. And then on the southern end, it's a little bit more difficult to make out the shape of the building yet, but it won't take long. As you can see, the steel is already moving down the center of the building and is going to get down here soon. So just a quick schedule look ahead of where we are. So the concrete slab in Sector C, if you use that map, is the southwest corner along Robinson. That concrete's actually already done. That was finished last week. All the deep pier foundations are complete. The concrete core walls and towers are all complete, and steel erection is underway in A and in B sectors, but it will get up to the roof in Sector A next week. Steel erection has moved into B and should move into C shortly. The slab on metal deck at level 2 and 4 is supposed to start happening next week or the week after. They're going to continue with floor boxes. They've placed most of the 76 that I mentioned in sectors D and E, and they're now working towards F. And then all the site utilities in Broadway and Sector H and J is what's kind of left as far as getting underground utilities around the area finished. And then we've had a series of change orders. I know that you guys have already reviewed each month when we came with change orders, but this is change order number 8, and I can walk you guys through that before the next item on your agenda today. So change order 8 included a series of different items. The first item was installing electrical heat tape to water piping. It's used to keep exposed piping warm if it gets cold in the exposed area of the loading dock. We are including some additional power to an exhaust fan, some additional sound speakers in a corridor, and the power for that heat tape that we just mentioned, and are updating some AV faceplates. Item number 3 is a credit to the project where we had specified some galvanized rebar that wasn't needed and only needed standard grade rebar, so there was some cost savings there. An escalator cleaner was requested by SMG, the operator. This was an item that we had left as an optional item for bids, pending how bids came in. And when bids came in favorably, we asked SMG again, do you still want to have this escalator cleaner? And they wanted to add that. Item 5 is adding some AV and audio equipment to just 5 floor boxes. Item 6, we needed to add 3 structural framing members for the life safety fall arrest system along the roof. That is what people who are on the roof clean and work on the roof, they tie off onto for safety, their harnesses. Item 7 is a credit for drilled pier remobilization costs. In the earlier change orders 5 and 6, we weren't sure if drilled pier foundations was going to be complete at the time when we got to this point, so they added the cost to have to bring the drilled pier back should it be needed. But luckily they didn't finish all their pier drilling, and so those costs we weren't required to remobilize any equipment, so we got those costs back as a credit. And item number 8 is also a credit for some foundations that were part of the loading dock enhancement. We needed Terracon to go out and test the soil, and to keep the speed of things going, we put the piers in to the enhancement and said they could be removed after testing confirmed. Terracon went out and tested and said we won't need the piers, and so we got a credit back for that. As far as change order number 8 goes, there was no extension on any of these items that changed the date of the completion. And one thing I just want to point out, we said this was a 24-month construction project. It started in June, and right now we're sitting at September 5th. So that does show some slide in time, but the majority of that is weather days that have extended the project and the one enhancement that extended the project. So we don't feel they're behind in any sort of way. This is just really where the typical construction process has led to the finished completion date. Total change order number 8 is $18,379.55. And just a quick summary of the cost to date. You can see the change orders 1 through 7 and amendments 1 through 4 shown here, based off of our original price of $168,177,535. Adding change order number 8 makes our new proposed contract price currently would be $169,510,385.30. Any questions for any of you?
Questions, anyone? Kevin, thank you. Appreciate the report. Any additional comments about that, David? Okay, that brings us then to, as Kevin has indicated, item 5 is a resolution approving change order number 8. It was considered by the subcommittee and comes with the approval of the subcommittee. It's been moved and seconded that we approve change order number 8 on the convention center. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution approving the change order is adopted. David, that brings us then to item number 6 on the agenda.
Yes, sir. Item 6 is recommend joint resolution approving change order number 2 and amendment number 2, MAPS 3 wastewater main relocations and expansions, increase of $29,925.13, accepting the project and placing the maintenance bond into effect, project M3-C009, SC-1015, WC-0938. If you recall, this is the sanitary sewer project that benefits not only the convention center but also the hotel and the other buildings that are around there. We had sanitary sewer to be done with the convention center. The sewer line needed to be moved that went down the middle of the block for the Omni Hotel, and then the utilities department was concerned about the age and condition of the line downstream from there, so they wanted to replace that all the way down to Shields. So we did a 3-party contract on this. So this includes the MAPS office, the utilities department, and the Alliance. So there's monies from all of those being put in on this. If you look at the last sheet of your memo, or the second page, you'll see that it spells out how the funding is. So you'll see that the MAPS money is only about $9,000 of that. I lost my place here. Yeah, $9,123.18 of this change order. The other $20,801.95 is being picked up by Aquit. So this comes with the approval from the subcommittee.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion, Michael?
David, I have a question. These were old I-40 piers?
Yes, sir. Yes, that's a good point. That as we went in there to place that sanitary sewer, we found that the I-40 piers were brought down about 4 or 5 feet and cut off because they're large bridge piers.
Right.
And we had to deal with some of those.
Wasn't that the OT's responsibility to remove all that and clean it up and deliver us a clean site?
Not necessarily. It's their property. And we've got an easement on their property.
Okay.
Further questions? It's been moved and seconded. We approve the resolution. All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, no. It is adopted. Next item, David.
Item 7 is recommend resolution waiving consultant selection procedures and approving architectural services contract with GSB Incorporated, MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Center Number 1, additional improvements, $302,250, project M3-H002B. This is the architectural contract for those additional improvements that were approved to be done at Wellness Center 1. We're waiving, or asking to waive consultant selection because it just makes sense to use the same architect in our mind. They have a history there. They know the project. They know the owner. They've got all the records. They've got all the stuff there. So it helps us save money and time there. So with the approval of this contract at council, then we'll begin the design process where they will meet with the owner or the operator and our office and begin deciding how it'll be configured.
And the money we're spending is consistent with how we were charged before when we've done business with these people. So you feel like the amount is reasonable?
Yes, yes, sir.
Further questions?
Move the resolution.
It's been moved and seconded. We adopt the resolution. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is adopted. All right. Item number 8, is it, David?
Yes, sir. Item 8 is recommend resolution approving change order number 19 and amendment number 18, MAPS 3 Modern Streetcar Main Line, a decrease of $384,693.56, project M3-S007. So as we continue to wrap up this project, this is a change order and amendment that you've seen many times with construction projects that have come through here. So we have a lot of small items in comparison to the project, just various things that needed to be fixed. But then when you get to the amendment part of it, that is where we have already established contract prices, and the quantities were established on the plans. And as we measured up those quantities at the end of the project, we didn't use as many quantities of some items as we had planned. So therefore, we have a large credit, and we had contemplated this for quite some time, knew it was coming, just waiting for those final measurements. So the big news in here is the $500,000 credit on the quantity reconciliation, which balances this out. So it ends up being a decrease of the $384,693. This comes with the approval from the Streetcar Subcommittee.
It's been moved that we approve it. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve it. I think it's interesting that at the subcommittee, they did go through every one of these, and it was explained, each of these changes, they took the time to do that. So I think it's been very well vetted. I just want to add that. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just have a question, David. This frees up roughly $350,000. And on our, earlier, the expenditures report we reviewed showed that the streetcars had $606,000 remaining budget. So is this another $300,000 on top of that?
It is, but as we discussed in the subcommittee meeting yesterday, you'll notice on your line items there's $155,000 that's administration that's still in there, and there's charges that have incurred that we haven't received yet in order to put on the book, and there'll continue to be administrative costs on this as we work through finalizing everything with Embark. Then also there's still things out there that the State Safety Office, the ODOT, wants us to do. You'll notice that there's yellow netting on the stops, and that's because they ultimately really didn't like our handrails. They wanted more cables or slats or whatever in there, and we did that as a temporary fix so that we could get the streetcar open. But there's going to be some things that we have to do. That's just one of maybe half a dozen things. And some of those, because there's 22 stops, it's a big system, it's expensive. We think that a lot of that is going to be used on getting that done. Bumpers on the stops, the rails. There's just several things that we need to do. So it's not a true picture of what's sitting there ready to be used somewhere else.
I was just trying to clarify whether the 350,
but it is,
350 was already in the 606.
No, it is not.
In addition to, so, thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve this. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The item is approved, David. Item number 9.
Item 9 is recommend resolution approving the allocation of $450,000 of excess collections and/or interest from the Oklahoma City Capital Improvement Sales Tax Fund for signal prioritization for MAPS 3 Transit Modern Streetcar System. You have, it was just handed out to you, a revised resolution. The resolution was revised at the subcommittee, so if you move the resolution, I encourage you to move the revised resolution. This resolution comes from the subcommittee. It is not staff-driven, but it comes out of the subcommittee, and they're asking for $450,000 to do signal prioritization for 21 signals along the route because of concerns of operations time or route time. I've just give everybody the same information that I gave the streetcar subcommittee yesterday, and that is that we've been working with Public Works, understanding that Public Works operates the traffic signals. They maintain them, they operate them, they're in charge of them. We've been working with them with all the streetcar activities, and we're working with them presently to do 5 of those signals on the route right now, and Public Works is doing those with their funds, and the equipment's been ordered. It is being installed now, and the programming will be done next week, so by the end of the month we think those 5 will be up and running. It is our belief that we should do these incrementally to see how they affect the system. The subcommittee believes that we should go out and do all 21 of them right now.
I would add to that if we approve the resolution, that this will be MAP 3 refunding some of the public works funding on those 5. But in addition to what David said is, this is in response to public comments to their experience riding the streetcar, desires and some of the issues that they've had. And the negative comments back from too much time at stoplights. We've also had some comments where people were addressing the safety issues, where the driver was coming up and since they didn't have a green light, it might be changing to yellow. Do you go through the stop or do you stop? And in some cases, they've had situations where people have been kind of, I wouldn't say thrown around in the car, but if you were standing, it could be a dangerous situation. So it was also addressing a safety issue along those lines. It does come with the recommendation of the subcommittee in total.
Michael?
Well, David, I have a question. I'm sorry, I may have misunderstood something. Tell me again what you're saying, that we're already looking at doing 4 or 5. Just explain that.
Public Works is currently doing 5 of the intersections, 4 of them on Robinson and the one at 4th and Harvey, as we speak right now, to see how that affects the timing. And if that makes a substantial difference, then the plan would be to continue to do more intersections to see how that impacts the time. I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying that this is not a good thing. I do believe that the prioritization will help the route times, but we just believe, I believe, and Public Works believes that incremental improvements are better.
And I would add to that, there's not anybody on the subcommittee, or we don't want anybody any of the public to believe that this is going to be an end-all to solve all the issues. But we believe that it's extremely important to get this out in front and start working on all of these stops so that it improves the experience the rider has.
I guess for me, I just don't see a compelling, is there more than a compelling reason to do that today? I would seem to me, I'd like to see how the Public Works is doing and kind of evaluate that before we go all in. That's those. And the other question I have in terms of cost, this would come from the current, they're asking for excess dollars from sales tax. How does that fit into the next item, the scheme?
Well, it would be the idea that that would come out of that request. So there's $4 million on that next item for the plan. So if we took 450 here, then that ask
would come out of
$3,000,555.
I think it would come out of there.
Sue?
David, does Public Works have any timeline for watching the effect of the next 5 and then implementing the additional?
We haven't discussed a real timeline, but I think you would be able to see that effect pretty quickly. It either works or it doesn't. And, I would encourage them to continue pretty much immediately and see what else we can do. We're not planning on taking this over a year's time or something like that.
And another question, could you explain to me what the signal prioritization is?
Right. Well, as the car approaches, it lets, in short, it lets the signal know that there's a streetcar coming, and it gives it priority over other traffic movements to get through the intersection. So that if they're coming down, let's say Robinson, for instance, they won't stop at every street necessarily. They will get a smooth ride all the way to the next stop.
I would like to move approving the amended resolution as it was in the handout.
I think we have to move to amend the resolution first. Yeah.
I move that we amend the resolution as it was in the handout.
Well, I know that there's going to be additional discussion, but you can go ahead and move anything you want to, but we're going to talk about this a significantly amount more. So you want to move what?
That we accept the amended
Amanda?
I believe what Mr. Boatwright is explaining is that he's moving the resolution be amended as provided to you this morning in the handout that was provided by staff.
Rather than the one that's been in our packet.
So this is just the amendment at this time. If there was a second, so the vote would be just simply on the amendment, and then if it is approved, you would be voting on the amended resolution. If it is not approved, then you would have the opportunity to vote on the resolution as presented.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Could
All
you
right.
put just a simple comment, explanation of the difference of the one that was just passed out today?
Can you help me? with that?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had time to read it since we've been,
The resolution.
yeah.
What was
yeah.
the amendment?
The amendment provides that the installation, or the procurement and installation, procurement is the purchasing of the equipment and software that's necessary, and that the installation of that procured equipment and software happen as soon as possible, so that there's no delay in that process that we have to go through. What happens is we have to go through a procurement process of buying the actual equipment, and then we have to have a contractor who installs it. Sometimes those are the same, sometimes those are separate. It would be separate and distinct from the contract for the mainline construction.
Right.
It would not be done as a change order.
Right, that is one distinction that we needed to make, because we are pretty much at our level legally of change order amount with the existing contractor, so we're using a city contract that Public Works has.
I want to, Michael Adams and I attended that meeting as well, and my understanding is that staff made a proposal after working it out with the operator and with Public Works. And the subcommittee wanted to do it immediately rather than do 5 and see how that goes and then do more to see what the impact is. They want to do it, they want it done now, all 21, with excess money. And so I think that's the issue that we have. They're asking for us to give them excess money. And so a couple of questions, and then I know that Michael has a question. I'm kind of interested in where we stand with them. They have now asked us, they've exceeded their budget, they've used their contingency, they've asked us for program money for the contingency. They're telling us now that they've got $600,000 left in the budget and $300,000 more that they're getting back today. So they've got $900,000 left. Last year, we also approved money out of the excess budget for things that they thought needed to happen. And so I'm very interested in making sure that we do. Oversight's a burden. It was said in the subcommittee meeting, in the grand scheme of this isn't that much money, and I agree. And I think that we all want to see this operating at peak efficiency, and so I think this is a very reasonable thing, and reasonable minds can differ about this. However, we do have an oversight responsibility. We've got at least two more senior citizens projects to build. We've got a park to finish, and we've got a convention center to finish. And on the transit, we rarely meet that they're not in there asking us for more money that's above their budget. And I'm saying I want to look at that with a careful eye, and I absolutely want to discharge our oversight responsibility for all of the projects. And so in that message, one, I know that Michael Adams has a couple of questions to ask, and then Jason, I'd like for you to be prepared to come forward. We're going to have some questions about what you prefer as the operator. Michael?
Well, I would say intuitively it makes sense that signal prioritization would improve operations. So
Absolutely.
Certainly, and we all want to see a successful operation on the streetcars. But I think there's also other concerns about signal prioritization. I mean, I can imagine being a pedestrian standing on the corner in the rain, waiting for my light to change, and then suddenly it doesn't change, or I have to stand there for more time waiting to be able to cross the street, or waiting at a light to make a left turn, and when it comes time to make the left turn, it doesn't happen, and I have to sit through another cycle. So I understand there's other considerations, and certainly the streetcar is important, but I think we have people in the city who manage those concerns, and you consider all those things, and I don't see anything wrong with David's suggestion that we do this on a methodical basis, that we look at them, do a few and see how it works, and we consider, I don't know that all 21 are necessary. I think, I guess my other comment is it seems like this is kind of bordering on operational issues, which is kind of outside our purview. And so for something like this, I'd kind of like to hear from Embark, from the operators, from somebody else, and tell us and ensure us that this is going to have the impact that we think. You know, I mean, I'd rather, I guess, see these types of requests come from the operator or come through the operator on those things. I don't know that it's, you know, I mean, obviously, like I said, we all want to see a successful system, but I just think I don't see anything wrong with doing it methodically and following the guidance of our staff and engineers that we have on board.
I believe our discussions have really gone beyond the current resolution. You know, right now, the current resolution is just to address whether or not we want to amend the resolution. Is that correct?
The motion and second that's on the table is for whether or not it should be amended to include the language that the installation, procurement installation occur as soon as possible.
And in order to vote on that, I'd like to hear what Jason has to say. Jason, would you mind coming forward? While you're coming, you've heard David describe the meeting between you and Public Works, your folks in Public Works and the MAPS group, and you had worked out a plan that you thought was reasonable and feasible. Now we're being asked to do something different. I'd like your view on it.
Right. So yeah, making the streetcar system, again, as mentioned, as efficient as possible, of course, is all of our goal. And that is something that David, Public Works, and I have been coordinating on very closely. And I can tell the committee, without a doubt, the system will benefit from transit signal priority. When you look at the loop times that we're getting now, we're right at about 52 minutes. And we monitor these loop times regularly, multiple times throughout the week. So there's a series of things that we're going to need to do operationally to tweak that route time and get it to our target of between 40 to 42 minutes. And again, I'll just say traffic signal priority is absolutely a critical piece of doing that. And so our plan, and what we had worked out with Public Works and the MAPS office, was to go through as staff and identify those signals or those intersections that we would consider to be, hate to use the word priority again, but let's just say the most important for making our route time, and then also identify a set of signals that we're pretty sure we could improve our route time, by addressing those as well. And so that's what we did. We came up with our, let's say, call it our must-have traffic signal priority list, and we've started working on that. In fact, as David had mentioned, Public Works, they cut the work order on the 16th. The equipment is here. It's being installed. Our plan is to test that traffic signal priority technology on the 3rd of February, and we will monitor for a week, and we'll have results. We'll know exactly what the impact those 5 traffic signal priority intersections will have on our system by February 10th. And so from there, with that data, we'll be able to make more informed recommendations for the next round. And we may come back to this committee and say, you know what, we need to do another 15 right away. Or we may say, we would sure like to do another 10. These are the ones we think will have the most impact. The point is we do want to look at it incrementally and make sure that if we're going to allocate funds to a traffic signal enhancement, that it definitely is obviously the best use of those funds, because our project, as mentioned, there's also other components of the project that we feel are necessary for the long-term sustainability, whether it be, replacement parts, replacement infrastructure, specialized equipment. And so we as the operator say service and customer experience, top priority. If it takes every traffic signal to be prioritized to make that experience happen, then that's what we're for, 100%. But we also think we can accomplish that by doing it incrementally. And again, we're not talking about a long time frame. I mean, again, we cut the work order on the 16th, and we'll have results by the 10th. So we'll move through it fast. It's our goal to move through it very fast. So I don't know if that helps give a foundation of kind of where we're coming from as the operator.
It does. Others have questions?
I actually have a question. How long is the streetcar going to be free for the patrons?
It'll be free through February the 1st. So February the 2nd will be the first day that we're going to be charging fares. And we are doing a significant public outreach effort to educate our customer base about what that means and how to pay for a fare and the different options. And I'm glad to speak about that if needed.
And the reason I ask that is right now I've been looking at those public comments on social media as well, and I think there should be some type of urgency in at least getting those higher traffic lights and signals tested as soon as possible before the 1st, because obviously the public opinion on the ridership and even wanting to pay to ride is going to have an effect on what could happen. And that's just a question I have. Maybe it's a question and a comment in the same.
So the equipment for the traffic signal priority on the 5 that we're working on now, I mean, we're working on that now as quickly as we can and do anticipate having that done by the end of the month. They'll be operational by February 3rd, so there'll actually be one day, Saturday the 2nd, where we would be charging a fare but not have at least those first 5 prioritized signals operational. So then, February the 4th and on, even though we'll be testing and evaluating those 5, they will be, they will be operational and hopefully reducing the travel time. So we definitely want to get them implemented as soon as we possibly can, too.
And David said that this first group was going to be paid for by Public Works, and so there was no MAPS money going into it. Is that or
That's how it is now, but I can't guarantee you that we won't come back and ask to reimburse them.
Yeah, I get that.
But again, I think just that in itself, I mean, again, a collaborative effort between the 3 departments, and how can we make this happen and not delay any further implementing the technology.
Thank you. Anyone else a question?
I do, Tom. And maybe it's for Zane. I'm just trying to understand why the subcommittee came up with something different from the operator.
I would say that the goal is that we do all of the traffic signals as soon as we possibly can. That's the only thing that we're changing different.
Is that not redundant to what our operator and the Public Works Department would also operate under? I mean, I'm sure that if those few lights that are being studied deem that they need a change immediately, that change would be made immediately, regardless of if there were MAPS funds in place at this time or not. Am I correct?
For the 5?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the 5 intersections that are being prioritized, that technology will be in place and be contributing to improved times immediately upon installation. And then again, a week later, we're looking at a week of evaluation. We'll know how significant those improvements are. And then at that time, we would be, suggesting that we move as quickly as we can on whatever that next group is.
And is there a chance that at that point where you made that secondary recommendation that the amount would be different than what we're talking about today?
Sure. It could be another 5. It could be another 10.
Michael?
Tom, after hearing Jason's explanation, it just seems to me to be reasonable to see how these 5 and work with that, notwithstanding if these MAPS dollars are not, just in terms of trying to get it right in the procedure. So I'm more inclined to kind of vote against this at this time for that reason. But I'd certainly like to hear Jeff. I think Jeff probably has some thoughts about this as well, I think.
Sure. I want to recognize Jeff. This is Jeff Besdick. He is a member of the subcommittee and was, I'd say, the principal mover and advocate for us to amend this and to do it differently than staff and the operator recommended, and he can certainly state his case. Jeff, you've got a couple of minutes, so hurry.
Well, I'll try.
Go ahead.
Look, it was a unanimous approval by the subcommittee, and I think that's important to point out. Did any of you ride the streetcar to this meeting this morning? I did. And my experience was not good. I actually, 3 of the lights in my journey will be addressed in the first 5. But part of the problem is not just whether or not we can incrementally improve times on the entire route, but it's also to improve the reliability of the signage at each stop that tells a person when the streetcar is arriving. My experience was watching the streetcar, and if you're actually at 10th and Robinson, you can look downhill and see what's happening, and the streetcar got caught at every red light on 10th, which is not in the first 5. Consequently, the signage delayed. It stalled because the streetcar wasn't arriving when the prediction was going to occur. So that is one location where you can actually see the phenomena occur. In most locations, you can't see what the lights are doing to the streetcar. So when we talk about loop times and delivery times, it's not just can we speed up how quickly the streetcar makes an entire loop through the system. It's about the customer experience, the citizen experience at that stop with that delivery board, that prediction board telling you when the streetcar is going to be there. And there are other factors other than lights, people who don't know how to board properly or quickly, large groups, and certainly parked cars that cross the white lines. And the problem with the red lights is they exacerbate the delays. So what the subcommittee is moving is we're trying to solve as many problems with infrastructure that we can so that we can improve the reliability of the system overall so the experience is as best as it can be, because there are factors that the operator cannot contend with. I actually took the time to go to the Traffic Commission meeting. And part of the issue that we're having here is Public Works is mandated with not just moving streetcars and pedestrians across crosswalks, but automobiles. And one of the fundamental issues is, do we treat a vehicle that has 100, potentially 108 people on it with more priority than we do automobile movements? Right now, the street lights, traffic lights, are dumb. They don't know how many automobiles are sitting there. They don't know if a streetcar's coming. If a pedestrian presses a button, that's the only time that the street light is optimized. And it's important to note that this is not going to prevent that pedestrian button from being inhibited. So after a very lengthy meeting with Public Works, they encouraged me to not pursue getting a policy through the Traffic Commission that would mandate that the streetcar be treated like a high occupancy vehicle. They recommended that we solve it through infrastructure, if possible, and give them the tools they need. So the subcommittee's concern is we've had some bad press, we've had a lot of glitches, we've had the sign delay problems that have nothing to do with the quality of the work done for the sign displays, but have to do with these red lights. So you have a unanimous position in front of you, and I know you'll talk about the excess funds later in the agenda, but we feel like a $450,000 expense to permanently resolve this issue is a very small number in comparison to to the public not trusting a $130 million system. So we've got a lot of things going on here. We've never had rail before. You've got a subcommittee that's staffed with people who have traveled all over the world and experienced a lot of systems, and we know which ones have had a bad record and which ones haven't. So you've got essentially some experts telling you this is what you need to help take this issue off the table permanently. And, I've volunteered for 9 years, and I would not be up here telling you that you need to do this because you're putting the project at risk. We think that first impressions are everything, and they really are, particularly when the city's never had rail transit before. So that is the reason for the amendment. It's like, let's take this off the table, permanent, resolve it. If Public Works needs to adjust the timing a little bit with Embark, they're free to do so. But if Public Works and Embark are not saddled with the expense of upgrading these controllers later, and the public will have a better experience than they're having right now. Right now, it's not a good one. And an hour ago, I can tell you, I had that same experience on my way to this meeting. I was 15 minutes late, and the boards were not correct, and it was because of the red lights. So I would not be here, and I would not be advocating for this. I would not tell you that this would be a huge mistake. We won't know the consequences to public perception by doing it in piecemeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else?
I'm sorry, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Zane, you made that point. This first vote is about the new resolution, the language in the new resolution. Is that correct? So that's what we're voting on, Tom. Is that correct, Tom? Not the actual resolution in terms of the expenditure, but the new language in the new amended resolution. Is that correct, Amanda?
Yes, the vote before the board right now is to amend the resolution to include the language that the procurement and installation will be done as soon as possible.
Okay.
Yes. I agree with Amanda. All right, further discussion? All right, you have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is adopted. All right, what's next?
Now you vote on that resolution.
Now you have to move to accept or deny, whichever the motion is, the amended resolution.
Okay. Okay. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the amended resolution. And so what this does is say we're going to proceed with all 21 of them and not do it incrementally as soon as possible. Are we all, oh, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was just going to point out that we're going to recommend to council that be done. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the council will decide this. Yeah. That's a very good point. All right, further discussion? Sue?
Well, one thing that I'd like to say is I don't think it's a bad experience. I think the language is wrong. So we're not connecting with what the board says and our personal expectation of getting from point A to point B. Riding the streetcar has been a great experience, and I've done it several times. And I have experienced being late by the boards, too. So it concerns me that we are moving into a situation where we have a great streetcar system, and we are going to tweak it one way or the other. It's going to get done. So we know we're going to fix the snafus and the things. We've got to learn. But I'm concerned about this immediate gratification kind of thing, and that concerns me just a little bit. We don't have to, we all know when we ride in our cars, when we drive in our cars and we see a yellow light and it turns red, we are all extremely careful about being in the lane that's green and going. Because everywhere in our city, people are running red lights. Everywhere. And we know that. You know, you see it yourself many times a day. Well, so now we're prioritizing again. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea to prioritize some for the routes, but 52 minutes versus 42 minutes is 10 minutes. It's time, but, well, maybe we just adjust our schedules a little bit too. So I just want to throw that out there that sometimes I think we get bad press because we're using language that maybe it's not that extreme. So every time I've ridden the streetcar, it's been a delightful experience. And sometimes it's been to go to a place, and sometimes it's just been to ride the whole route. So I'm looking forward to the changes. I know we're going to make them. I have some concern about getting into Embark and the operator's role and the city's role. So that concerns me a little bit about this.
Kim? You said you wanted to say something?
You're reading my mind, huh?
Scary.
Thank you. I know that I live in a world that each day comes with imperfections. Nothing is perfect. And everything changes. I mean, we live in a moving dart. We're not in a bubble. I'm sure the first bus route that was ever run in Oklahoma City was fraught with issues because it was new. There were challenges. People didn't understand how to navigate around buses. I'm sure that there were times that the bus was late, that people missed work, that all kinds of things happened. But we I'm sure, addressed problems, looked at problems, evolved, and figured out how to make that service the best for all of the residents in Oklahoma City that depend on that mode of transportation. And because I'm here today and see that we have a very successful bus system, I'm going to say that our methodology worked. And I can only today say that that same methodology will be applied to streetcar, and it will be successful as well. If I lived in a perfect world, I would say, oh my gosh, let's push a stop button, fix everything that needs to be fixed, and move forward. But until we operate something, we don't know what the bugs are.
What is the point of volunteering?
I think we have a process to also honor here.
Excuse me, Jeff, you're not recognized. You may have a seat. You may have a seat. You'll get a turn. It's not your turn. Finish, Kim.
So I also have to trust that the people that are our operators, those specialists, the people that work in public works, the people that work at Embark are dedicated to the city and doing their job and making those things happen. I also believe that it was felt from the city that this is a MAPS 3 responsibility, there wouldn't be any studies going on those first 5 lights without something having come to the streetcar committee that said, hey, we need your approval to do this. We need finance to do this. But that didn't happen. Now, I also understand your sense of urgency, Jeff. I really do. I'm the subcommittee of a park that I know. I'd like to have another $200,000 or $200 million for it. But it's not reality. But we address the priorities and look at a way to make sure that it's a functional process that moves forward. You know, I think all of us every day use software. How many times do you get a software update that comes out absolutely perfect? What is it guaranteed to have? It has bugs. But do we throw the software out? Do we abandon it? No, we keep using it. And we report to those people who are responsible for making those changes in that software that, hey, there's a problem, we've got to fix it, we've got to address it. And I think that same thing has to happen here. There's no one, Jeff, that I think is more passionate about streetcar than you. I've seen that before. It was ever a MAPS 3. You've put more time, more effort, and more of your passion in it. And we totally recognize that. I want you to know that the things we talk about here, if we don't agree, it's nothing personal about you or your time that you've invested. So,
It's all right.
anyway, we don't live in a perfect world. We got to let things move forward.
Let's talk about process here. We're going to give Jeff a chance to make whatever response he wants to make, because that's what we do. I mean, this is a Citizens Oversight Board, and we want to hear what he has to say. I'm going to give a chance to, anybody can be heard, but I'm going to give the last word to Zane. He is the vice chair of that subcommittee, and he's going to get a chance to say whatever he wants to say in conclusion, but everybody's going to get a chance to say what they want to say here. Jeff, it's you. We're going to give you another opportunity.
Look, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
It's no problem.
9 years ago, we talked about this, and the benefit of being one of the last cities to build a streetcar system is we've been able to see who's succeeded and who's failed, or the public perception of failure. And there are many cities that did not implement this because it was not understood. And you're right. What you've got is you've got a department that's essentially commissioned to move automobiles. And this is a new territory for us. So we wouldn't come to you with a unanimous motion like this if we didn't believe that we were helping avert risk to the program. I agree with you about it being glitchy. And there are some days that I've got the time and the leisure to deal with putting an extra 10 or 15 minutes of my time. But it really comes down to who's using the streetcar. If you're a businessman and you've got to get to a meeting, or a lady that is involved in business downtown, you've got to get somewhere. If the on-time board is incorrect or it's stalling, I had a very important meeting at Sandridge, and I was 20 minutes late because of this problem. So if you have the time to build in your schedule for us to work out the kinks, it's perfectly fine. But if you're relying on, right now at least, as a reliable means of public transportation, the subcommittee is recommending to you unanimously that this is the thing you need to do to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to remind everyone, I'm here for the day. However, other people are on other schedules, and we do have a very important other item that will take some time. Michael, you're next.
Only one quick point. Jeff, what I did want to say is, you're not the only subcommittee that has brought something to the advisory board that didn't pass. It's happened with the Senior Health and Wellness Center subcommittee as well. So I just wanted to, that's all.
I'm going to, Michael?
I just want to say, I don't think
Say
anybody...
you get to be last.
I don't think anybody here has said they don't think this is a good idea. I think we're only discussing process.
Exactly.
And we have historically relied upon our consultants, the operators and things, and those groups to tell us what they think the needs are and to come up with a plan, and I intend to follow that advice.
Yeah, I would just say this. By habit, over 9 years, we've followed the advice that we've received from the experts. Jeff said they're experts on that subcommittee. We don't have any experts on our subcommittee, so we're all just listen and give it our best good judgment based on what we know. We listen to what the consultants tell us, but we're guided a lot by staff. And the only reason that I wanted to make sure that we understood what we were doing here is we were doing something that was different than what staff and the operator had recommended, although at the meeting, Jason did not get a chance to speak yesterday, or didn't speak. I wouldn't say he didn't have a chance, but he did not speak to the subcommittee at their meeting yesterday and tell them what he has just told us. So that is, at least from my point of view, a new piece of information that was very important to me, what the operator wanted to do. I don't think that it would be terrible if we did either thing. To me, The worst risk we have is if we recommend and we authorize the $455,000, and they do the study and they come back and say, we don't think we need all 21, we just won't spend it. Because it's going to be taken out of the $4 million that they're asking us for anyway. And if we don't authorize it and say, no, just do what David and Jason said, and they do it incrementally, we could get the same result. Am I thinking about that right, David? So either way we do it, if Jason comes back and says, we don't recommend that we install the other 21 or the other 16 or the other 15, do we get another kick at the can here? I mean, so I just wanted us to air this because we're doing something differently than what staff and operator said. But I don't think it's critical. I don't think we're going to lose money, and I don't think it's going to be non-critical. And we all are on these subcommittees, and we all give a lot of credence to what our colleagues on those subcommittees think. We have. All right, I'm through. Zane, you get the last word.
I would say that for the past 9 years, the experts and the subcommittee has had this in their mind and wanted to bring this forward to begin with. We've just yesterday decided from the subcommittee's standpoint, it is time to bring this forward. And we believe that the city staff, that the experts, and the subcommittee all believe that now's the time.
Well, the one thing I'd say to that is, if you've known this for 9 years, you've now spent $130-some-odd million. You've asked us for money numerous times. You've asked us for money out of the contingency fund. Now you're asking us for $4 million out of the excess money. Now you're asking us for this out of the excess money. If you've known this for 9 years, where in the heck have you been? I mean, that's what I don't get. If you've known this for 9 years, you're walking in here today telling us
Yes.
we just can't live without this? I don't get it.
I would say that in all this time, we've said wait, and
Nobody's ever said that to this group. We've never heard, no one here has ever heard anybody come in here and say, we needed this for 9 years, but we've decided to wait. No one's ever said that to me, and I've never heard it. But now, it's super critical after 9 years. And I'm all for it. I love what that subcommittee does. I really admire what you're doing, but I absolutely don't get it. But I'm not going to be upset either way. I'm just saying what you say, what you guys are saying to me makes absolutely no sense to me after 9 years. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Yes.
I just want to add, Tom, to kind of help out to Zane's argument. I think what he's saying is, in the development of this project, you probably knew to maybe get to maximum operation, this would be something that you needed. But you just didn't bring it up because you wanted for it to get operating to see if you absolutely needed. Does that help with the 9 years?
I do, and I think it was the subcommittees felt that it was their responsibility not to bring it before the board until they felt it was time. And I believe it was the subcommittee's understanding of their responsibilities is to not bring it forward until such time that we thought it was right.
Well, then I guess I just don't, I get that. I think that's a good point. I just don't understand knowing it for 9 years. And it wasn't included in the $4 million that you asked us for. And it wasn't included in what you asked us for last year in 2018. But all that aside, we have a motion, and we're going to vote whether or not to do it fast or whether to do it incrementally. And the vote is a yes vote says we're going to do it fast, and a no vote says we got to think about something else. Is that right, Amanda?
Essentially, that's right. A yes vote says that you're going to allocate $450,000 to this right now for the procurement and installation. A no vote says that it can be considered at a later date.
Okay. Is there further discussion? Oh, Kim.
But a no vote to me also says that we will allow the city in its current process to do its job
You're not
without
allocating the money
intervening.
at this time. It doesn't mean it can't be brought up later.
Okay. Boy, that seems Seems clear. All right, all in favor say, you understand the vote? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
How many yeses were there? 3. All right. All opposed say no. How many noes were there? All right. The motion fails. Next item on the agenda is, I guess we then have to decide, we don't have to decide anything else?
No, Chairman, you're done.
All right. That brings us then to item number 10 on the agenda, David. Thank you.
Item 10 is approve excess funding plan for the remaining Oklahoma City capital improvements, sales tax funds, excess collections, and/or interest for additional MAPS 3 project improvements. So this is the same plan that you saw in November and December that we discussed. We've talked for quite some time about coming up with a plan instead of piecemealing and approving requests as they come in. So this was the plan that we developed to deal with that, and I hope it is in line with this body's request. So we bring it today for a vote.
Michael, you had a question that you wanted to ask about it,
Well, I have, I guess, questions or comments, and I think this is the result of a process we started several months ago when we kind of started to realize we're going to have some excess funds, and we started asking how we were going to determine what to do with those, and we discussed having the subcommittees come up with a list of projects. And I think I failed maybe at that time or used the wrong terminology when we started talking about wish lists. And I think I'd like to clarify that what I think we want to do is make sure that we're looking at things that are needed and things that are needed to ensure the success of the existing projects, things that increase revenues or reduce expenses on the projects. I mean, when you use the term wish list, I think it's easy to say, well, if you had $5 million, what would you do with it? And people can obviously come up with a list of things. And so I guess I'm curious from David's standpoint or from the committee's standpoint, how, we've got, I guess behind each of these numbers there's a list of things. And so how are we vetting those? How are we making sure these are needs and not just wants? I think Michael's talked about prioritizing, and I think we want to make sure we're addressing the items that are really truly needed by the projects to make them successful.
I think needs versus wants is in the eye of the asker, or in the mind of the asker.
I don't think we here sitting around the table are necessarily going to be able to weigh one need versus another need. So I guess I'm asking, are the MAP staff or the engineers, is somebody going to, or the operators going to be looking at these things? What are the criteria that they're looking at them and saying these are things that really need to be done? And so
well, not all the projects have operators per se. The trails don't have operators other than Parks oversees that, and the Parks Subcommittee is using some of their money to do some projects, and they've asked for additional money to do some other projects. The streetcar put together a list of various things, parts and equipment, as Jason mentioned earlier. So really, it was just an exercise of each subcommittee asking them what they thought they needed or could use, regardless of whether it was a need or a want. I think there's both in all of those. So we developed these lists and put them together, and that's what we have here.
Right. But I guess I'll throw out, I'd like to say let's look at these as I said, improve the operations of the existing projects, that increase revenues, reduce expenses, those sorts of things.
As opposed to just flat out new projects?
Yeah, we can obviously go, upgrade furniture, or something along that line. Those not necessarily going to do that. And I know, I appreciate, I guess, and I've sat through a lot of the subcommittee meetings. I appreciate the convention center when they came back and said, hey, we're not going to be asking for any more money. In fact, we may have some money to turn back to the group. That was very admirable. On other subcommittees I've sat in, it seemed like, well, our fair share of this is X amount. Let's create a list to equal that fair share. And so I'm not sure that everybody's looking at it the same way.
I'm sure that each chairperson and/or operator, if you stood them here, they would say, we need these things.
Right. But we're going to have, I mean, we're going to go through these, committee by committee, and just because we address one committee ahead of another one, I don't want necessarily the wishes to get done for that committee when the needs of another aren't addressed. I don't know how, with this plan, how necessary.
The way this plan works is it addresses all of those lists that the subcommittees came up with, regardless of want or need, but the list, with the exception that at the end of this year, there'll have to be a decision made of whether there's a fifth wellness center or whether there's additional trails. That's how it's set up. And the reason being is that MAPS 4 potentially could have more wellness centers that might influence your thinking. I'm not advocating either way. I'm just telling you where we might be. The Better Streets, Safer Cities bond issue has trails and sidewalks in it, so that's getting a lot of attention, and MAPS 4 could have additional trails and sidewalks. I don't know. So we were hoping that at that point we would be better informed as to what a MAPS 4 might do and be able to make that decision. But other than that, all of the other wants and needs are addressed as they are. And I'm sorry, this also assumes that money does come back from the convention center. There is an assumption there, but we think it's a good assumption. And it's incremental in here as to how it would happen. $11 million in December of this year, and then $5 million in April of next year and July of next year. As we get closer to the close of that project, we would feel better about where we are money-wise. I'm sorry.
No problem. I know we have spoken about this before, just in regards to a wellness center, a potential wellness center number 5, and having a bit of trepidation, considering that we haven't even broken ground on 3 and 4. And so far, we've had several requests come from our flagship wellness center. Wellness center number 2 is just getting underway and beginning to get to a point to where we can probably anticipate some requests from them. I don't know of any particular, but I think once they've been up and operating for a little while, they'll have an idea about whether or not what they have designed will actually meet the needs of their community. I know that we're still in limbo in regards to just finding locations for number 3, which might add cost considering where we are in that process. And then, like I said, we haven't even begun the process for Wellness Center number 4. So my only concern would be to cast a vote to send this to council, allocating funds for center number 5 when we haven't even, determined if the 4 that we're obligated to will have their needs met. I think people are trying to keep me quiet today. Something.
Well, Michael?
Well, you all have heard me say this before, but the reason that I am going to vote against this, because it really is a timetable with available funds. And again, we told the public that we were going to build 4 or 5 health and wellness centers. When I think about quality of life, and we've talked about MAPS being quality of life projects, and certainly they have been, but I can't think of anything more that would be higher priority, quality of life than people's health. As a state, we rank 43rd in the quality of health in this country. In this country, there are only 2 states that have higher cardiovascular deaths, disease caused by death, only 2 states. The one thing that we do know on an issue like cardiovascular health is that exercise and diet are the 2 primary things that can be done to promote and prevent those kinds of deaths. And as we think about the things that we're talking about are important or not as important, it comes to my mind that I can't think of anything that would be more important than the health of our citizens. And for us to pass this timetable or this priority list, and it is saying that we may or may not have a fifth wellness center. It's for that reason, because I think of wellness centers are as important as most of the other projects, or any other project, quite frankly. And for that reason, I will not be supporting this timetable. Thank you.
Kim?
And I'm still, and I apologize if I'm just missing the boat, how we approve a plan that puts us $9.9 million in the hole.
Well, that's because that decision would have to be made of whether you do trails or whether you do the fifth senior wellness.
So actually, what we're approving is a plan to continue working toward expending and allocating excess funds
That's right.
in a manner that doesn't receive a negative balance when we're all said and done.
Right, we won't go into a negative balance. But we're getting far along in the program, and there's things that need to be done. We do have this excess money there that could be used on projects, and as this body has said many times, didn't want to just dole it out a little bit here and a little bit there without a plan, so we've developed this plan. It's fully open for revision or whatever you care to do.
And David, just for clarification, should this be passed, does that mean that the dollars designated for Wellness Center number 5 in this plan can only be used for that? Or is it something that provides a bit more of a contingency, if you will, for the yet-to-be-developed 3 and 4 and any requests? Because if Senior Wellness Center number 2 comes to us now, there is no pot of money, right, once we allocate this to support them.
Right. This really doesn't tie you down to anything other than giving you a framework so that let's say we did ask for I'll just pick one, the first one on the list, the $10 million for Union Station, and when it goes to council, one of the questions they ask is, do we have a plan? And I would like to be able to say, yes, we have a plan, and this is what we're executing.
Right, but within that plan, what I'm asking is does that mean that the Senior Wellness Committee does not have anything to come back for if this says that it's for Wellness Center number 5?
Absolutely not.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
I'm just kind of painting this out. Even, let's say it says, let's say back to the Union Station, for the park, $10 million. You could decide you only want to do 8.
Okay.
Or you might want to do 11, but at least this is a framework of a plan that informs you a little better as we move along.
So it'd be up to the subcommittee to say, you know, we would like to have a Wellness Center number 5. However, if Wellness Center number 2 comes and, you know, they need to change something, we have that ability. We just have to make that decision then as a subcommittee to say that this is important to address.
Right. This doesn't tie you to anything. In fact, every item that we would bring to this body would specifically list. So even for the streetcar, there's $4 million listed there. I would put on there what it's for. It's for the wheel truing machine. It's for this more signal prioritization. It's for this, it's for this, it's for this.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
And I guess when I started the conversation about want versus need, that's kind of the point I was getting at. We're not driving a nail in here saying this is how much we're going to spend on this project regardless of what the items are on the list.
I think there might be some expectations.
I think we still want to make sure that we go through a process that, you know, in the subcommittees that we say, is this something we really need? How is this going to improve our revenues? How is this going to reduce expenses? Is this something we really need? And I hope staff or somebody drives those conversations and that we make sure that the items we're doing, kind of meet those criteria, that we're addressing things that are important, because, we all think we want to make all these projects successful. And so, that was, I wasn't intending to start a conversation about the relative merits of different things. I just wanted to make sure we weren't driving a nail in these numbers here, and there was still flexibility. We were still going to consider how they affect the overall operation of the project.
There's still flexibility. However, I think that if you approve this plan, you want to stay somewhat close to it.
Yeah.
But each of the items can be vetted through the process as it comes through, because I know council will want to know why we're doing this and how much we're spending and that. I just would like to have a plan, and that's what I've heard from everybody here, that you want to hear a plan.
And I think that's good. I also want to go back on one other item, and I know a couple of months ago I suggested that we consider setting aside some of the excess funds as kind of a capital reserve fund, and that would be used to maintain the existing MAPS projects. I mean, we're sitting here creating a lot of these great buildings and great facilities, and then throwing the burden of maintaining them either on operators or on the cities. And I think we could leave a very good legacy as a committee if we were to establish some sort of reserve fund that could be used in the future to maintain, put a new roof on a building, or to maintain some of that stuff.
Right, because what you're speaking about is just that. Our contracts say, even for the wellness centers, we have operators, but we still have to do major improvements like pumps at the Whitewater, roofs at the wellness centers, those kind of things.
Yeah, at the fairgrounds or whatever. I mean, those are things that are a burden that's suddenly going to be thrust on the city. And I think maybe even for MAPS 4 and future projects, they ought to consider a portion of the funds, and maybe the interest on the funds in the future could be allocated towards something like that. And in our particular case, when we looked at these excess funds, we've talked about this in the past, as of a certain date, there was X amount of interest in there that we considered excess funds. And we have not considered the additional interest being earned in any of these calculations.
Right, and that was purposeful.
So one of the things I'd like to have the committee consider, and we don't have to do it today, but I'd like to consider that we kind of say that was as far as interest goes, that interest as of that date that we've established these numbers is the interest that's available to us, and let's set the future interest from that point forward aside as a reserve fund and leave a legacy as a committee to maintain these projects in the future. And again, that doesn't have to be decided today, but I think it's something we might want to kind of try to consider.
I just want to point out that the interest that Mr. Adams is talking about was purposefully left out because it was unknown, and to continue to project out and not knowing what cash flow was and how it would affect interest, as I said, was purposely left out. So there is additional monies that will come in. We're just not sure what that will be. So this is a conservative number.
Hey, so David, I'm going to make sure I understand it. So if this is passed, what we're saying is, if there is enough money in this order, regardless of the timetable when things start or finish, in this order is how things will be funded. Right?
That's what I would follow, yes, sir.
Okay.
And part of this is also based on staff availability and timing of things.
Zane?
Just so that I'm clear, this is the priority? The column over here,
yeah, you see the dates
how
at the
did
top.
streetcar come out at the bottom?
No, it's
That's what I'm trying to
the
get.
priority is from left to right. See the
Okay.
dates?
Okay, thank you.
So let me...
And I don't want to call it priority, it's timing.
So on this timetable, it shows that we are currently working on 2 projects for the river, filtration and capacitors, and that at the end of this month, they will finish designing and building, and as of February 1st, we need to start construction on those 2 items.
That is a timetable that was set up probably last summer. We're close to that. But we intend on having the filtration and the capacitors done before opening of the Whitewater facility this year.
This season.
Yes.
So if we approve this today, is that saying that whenever it's time to pull the trigger on those first 2 projects on this list, that by us voting to approve this today will allow that to happen without it coming through the subcommittee back through here and then to council?
The river money has already been approved. I left it on here so that it all balanced the books from what you saw from the presentations that we gave. So all the way down to the park, that's already been allocated and that's already in the works. We're already working on that.
And can I ask for a change on Union Station and have it say the park and then : Union Station,
Okay.
or parentheses, because Union Station isn't a MAPS project, the park is.
That is a very good point.
Michael?
The final thought is, I think it's interesting that of all the projects that we have listed here, that the projects that are slated to be, if there's money at the very end, and in fact competing against each other, side trails and senior centers, are also what has been already, in terms of funding, the smallest projects that receive funding through MAPS 3. But they're also the projects that are actually go beyond downtown, the river, and into the projects that are actually, for the most part, located in neighborhoods. I just find that so ironic that we're pitting, in effect, the two smallest projects, basically in terms of funding, wellness centers and trails, against one another. And they're already the smallest funded, and the less money that are going to these projects that are actually those projects that are going in our neighborhoods. And again, as I think about MAPS 4, I think about the message that we are sending to the voters because of that realization. Thank you.
I just want to add as I said before, the projects that are in Better Streets, Safer Cities and in the bond, there is a significant amount of money, tens of millions of dollars going towards trails and sidewalks. And we don't know what if MAPS 4 might include some of those. So that's why it's where it is.
Sue?
David, I have a question for you. I understand that we've already voted on all of those river items and Wellness 1. And did we already vote on the park?
No.
Okay. So from the park down, that's kind of really what we're voting on here?
That is.
That potential time frame for them?
That is. The river remains on here just for continuity because we started this process so long ago, and the presentations that we gave included all those numbers. I wanted to just keep it the same numbers.
Yep. Well, I just want to say that, because I've never voted no until today, that I'm glad to see the streetcars there, and that time frame is February for them and or March. So that looks like that money will be around pretty quick for them to do what they need to do, and by then they'll have that study. So.
Well, a couple of things. Just offer a couple of thoughts about it. One is they've done what we asked them to do. I mean, we asked them to bring us a plan, and they brought us one. This is the first time since we met the first time 9 years ago that we're going to have to be thinking about comparing oranges and apples. In the past, we've always been deciding what inside each budget, inside each project. But now, we're going to have to be deciding, as David has described, a trail or a wellness center or something different. We're going to have to be assigning some priority. Ultimately, the decision makers will make that decision, not us, but they will be looking to us for a recommendation. And it is, to my way of thinking, we can't have, I don't know today whether I would rather have a trail or what was the other thing you said? We got to decide between a trail and a what?
Wellness center.
A trail and a wellness center. I'm not prepared today to say which of those two would have priority when we get somewhere. And I'm very reluctant to send a message that this is our priority. All of us who are working on this every month for 9 years look at this and say, is this the priority? And we say, well, it's just the timing, but it's kind of the priority. And I am concerned about us sending a message to the council that this is it, because I haven't heard myself what they want to do at the fair, for sure. I'm not doubting it's needed, but do I like that better than Union Station if Union Station costs $20 million rather than 10? I don't know. Would I rather have a trail than the Union Station? I don't know. I mean, we have not had people in here telling us the value of one project versus the other, to my way of thinking. And do we not want to finish 3 and 4 and go ahead and start on 5 and then find out we don't have the money to finish 3 and 4? Gosh, I don't. I mean, I don't want to do that. And I don't want to take an action today that leaves the impression with anybody that we have gone through all of this and this is the priority and this is the timing, because the fact is we haven't. We don't know how these projects compare to each other. one could say, well, if there's plenty of money, but we don't know that. We got a park to build and 2 wellness centers to build. We got a convention center to finish. I'm just saying, I'm willing to say to staff, just me, I'm willing to say to staff, like it that you put together a plan. This is a framework for us to go forward, but we want a table approving individual expenditures until somebody comes in and explains to us how they're going to spend that money and what the benefit's going to be. But as far as having a plan, this is okay, but we're not approving the spending of any money. I mean, that's me.
And what this would do is give me guidance as to when I should bring things forward. And like I said, and then we can tell council we have a plan.
I'm not saying everybody feels like I do. I just I'd like to hear what you have to think.
I understand what you're saying, Tom, but I think one of the reasons that David and the staff put this together is because we did feel like we were being piecemealed. Like people were just coming and we were having to consider
I know that.
every request one at a time. So I think this at least tells us, it makes all of the committees, as much as they can, stop and think about what they may need. And that's where my trepidation is on a Center 5, because I don't know what 3 and 4 are going to need. Yeah. So, yeah. But I think that without a framework, we're just going to kind of keep flapping in the wind, waiting for committees to come back. So I understand why we need something.
I do too.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we're together.
I think the plan is important for the reasons you said. If the park comes in and says, well, gee, we really need $12 million for the Union Station to make it operational or make it successful, and we have a plan here. We're going to say, well, okay, something else is going to have to give, and we'll be able to kind of look there and say, well, where do we think, if they want an extra $2 million that's not in the plan, and what's going to have to give? And so we kind of know what all the, I guess, list of projects choices are, things like that we can consider. So I think it's good that we have a plan. I just don't want it to be.
I do too, and I think they've done what we asked them to do. I mean, so it's kind of hard not to like that.
I have a suggestion that maybe we rename this and call it the Preliminary Excess Funding Plan, Draft 1. Because that's really what it is. It's a concept, and I understand David's position that if the council says, what are we doing with these excess funds? Where are we? He can show him that we have a preliminary excess funding plan drafted. And at some point we'll have to engage that further. But then I think we also need to decide, and probably with David's input, when do we need to make that final plan? The Union Station is in the middle of a feasibility study, but do we know for sure that will be done by the end of March?
That's the date I got from Public Works, and that's when the contract's due.
So do we need to, by March, have a plan to move forward? Because there's timetables that you're going to have to say yes or no, right? I mean, come April, what do we want to do?
That's why we started this in October.
Right. So maybe can we have our subcommittees work on that in February?
Work on what?
On the ones that have speculation here. And I'm just saying a project and dollars.
Well, really, the only one that has to mesh with a feasibility study is the Union Station Park Union Station project. It was just, I put the streetcar where I did, knowing that we'd be in operation for about 60 days and we'd start knowing what we needed, and that would give us the ability to pick up and do whatever we needed there. Fair Park has had their building for quite some time, and they'd like some additional things out there. And then again, it has to do with my project managers, who I've got available, and how we can phase this. But nothing says, let's say that the feasibility study, I find out that it's not going to be done till May. Well, that's when I would bring the item. I'm not necessarily going to bring it right on the April meeting just because this says so. Now, there are some, like the streetcar and the park, I will bring some things because it's in the plan. But if it is relying on something else, it might move a little bit.
So inevitably, we will be designing these project by project as we move forward, regardless of what this plan says.
Right, you're still going to see the things that we do. So let's say the streetcar, it's been such a topic here, I'll just use it for example. We're going to bring to you authorization to purchase a wheel truing machine and spare parts, and it's going to be all listed out, and it's going to have the amount. I'm just trying to need a timeline and a basic amount of money that I'm set to work with. So it'll still come to you, and you can still say, yes, we'll do that. As Mike was saying, it's a need versus a want. So then it will be approved at that point. Don't think that just because it's one big block there that it's just going to all go away. So for instance, with the Fairgrounds, I know they want an LED board. That will come as a project.
So having said all that, David, it's what you said earlier, that it's likely to come down to that there will be enough funding to do the things on these projects on this timeline, except when it gets down toward the end, because this is pay as you go, that there likely will not be enough money to do money for wellness centers, regardless if it's with wellness center or if it's wellness centers for wellness centers and trails, and there will likely be a decision will have to be made of which one.
I'd say more than likely, unless some of these others get cut.
Yes, so in that sense, it is a priority list, at least in terms of wellness centers and trails are not a priority.
I guess, yeah, it can be.
Sue?
Well, so maybe a thought is, first of all, this plan is holistic, and that we asked for it, and I'm glad to have it, because it gives me the big picture. And that is our role as an advisory board to have the full picture of where we're headed for everything. So maybe wellness, could we just take off number 5 and just say wellness? So that's wellness committee, just like trails / sidewalk, and could we put / sidewalk with that? Because I think
You mean instead of
everything else,
designating it for a specific project, just say it's one.
for the committee and their responsibilities, their purview. So that kind of helps me a little bit, because we're not saying,
What would you think
signal prioritization on streetcar, or whatever you said.
Yeah, it was just too convenient of a
Exactly.
single project.
But that way, it's not necessarily wellness 5, but whatever wellness needs, it's a ballpark of $14,820,000. And it could be that once we get there, our two committees may know, here's the pot, and here's what their needs are, here's what our needs are, and, we can always build some more feet somewhere. You can't build a complete building, but we can figure that out, and we will.
I always go back, when I get really confused in all this, I always go back to what is it that is our charge? And our charge is to review and recommend. And I'm not an expert in any of these things. I've become a little bit more proficient in parks, but I'm not an expert. But maybe it's now to a point where we need to have some experts look at this for us and say, okay, should we do some type of feasibility to say, what could we do for trails and sidewalks, and what should we do? The same thing for wellness and the fair or streetcar. And maybe we can do those things internally within our city's departments without having to hire somebody. But I understand all of these numbers. I understand that they can be wants. I understand that they can be needs. But I don't understand how important they are, how critical they are.
Well, if I could respond a little bit, that there's been discussion about Union Station, how important that is for the park. And then the trails continues on with the Trails Master Plan and doing things that are in that plan, which has already been established, so it just helps advance how much the city's doing within that plan. The Fairgrounds has some things that were cut because of budget concerns early on, and we ended up coming in under, right at budget, things that they felt like they needed on their project. And then you've heard streetcar all day today of the things that they need to help with operations and to decrease costs on that. So to some degree, they have been vetted. I think that if you put one person to look at all of them, you'd get competing interests, and we might be back to square one with, well, I can use the whole 50 million, you know.
Or maybe just listing the sub-projects out like you have River. You know, with River, you've itemized those items. So within wellness, we would itemize Wellness 1 and Wellness 5. And then obviously when the feasibility is done with Union Station, we can talk about what those items are. Fair part, all right, if we have $7.3 million needs, if we've identified them, let's list them out so that we're reminded, I guess, of what those things are.
Right, and what I will do is like I said, each project will come to you for approval. We could provide that presentation again that we did summer of last year that listed all the different projects and all the things that are on each of these.
Yeah, there was a detailed list of each of these numbers.
Yeah, it was in the presentation we did that showed all of it.
It showed, you know, the number that made up the Fairgrounds, the list of projects they had, and the list of projects the River had, and the list of projects. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, we can provide that if.
Well, I think all of these are good thoughts, and I think we're all trying to get to the same place. I mean, we want to do that. We are, to some degree, limited on time. What would you think about, just a suggestion, look at the document in front of you where it says excess funding plan. What would you think about crossing out the word plan and putting timeline and preliminary allocation? David is telling us that he needs this for the timeline. He's telling us that we're going to get another opportunity at some point to approve the projects. But we're saying we've got to start somewhere. So why don't would that be a thought? Excess funding timeline and preliminary allocation. And then we'll get a chance to review them as we get ready to approve. And it will allow us the flexibility, but it will be a plan, or at least a timeline that he can take to the council if he deems appropriate. Does anybody see a problem with that, or does that have any appeal?
If that requires a motion, I would move.
Pardon me?
If that requires a motion, I would so move.
You'll have to make a motion to
Amend the document.
and then vote on it.
Okay. So, Kim, are you making a motion that we amend the document to make that change?
Yes, to read excess, timeline, and preliminary allocation. I'm sorry, excess funding timeline and preliminary allocation.
All right. Excess funding timeline and preliminary allocation. It's been moved and seconded that we so amend it. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All right. The amendment is done. Now we have it in front of us. We have the amended excess funding timeline and preliminary allocation in front of us. Shall we approve it? It's been moved and seconded that we approve it. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is, no, I'm sorry. One no. Mr. Dover votes no. It has been approved. All right. David, taking into account, is there any new business? Are there any subcommittee reports?
I have one from Senior Wellness.
Yes.
We actually had a lot of visitors yesterday. I think it was our biggest crowd yet. Pretty exciting. A lot of community showed up from the current it's senior center, if you will, at Lincoln Park over on the northeast side. But they came yesterday to make sure that their voices were heard and to make sure that they had some input on the location, which still has not been decided. I think there have been some preliminary scouting going on, and there's been one location that's been a little more preferential for the operator for one reason or another, but there have not been any final decisions still on a location for Senior Wellness Center number 3. And so the group showed up yesterday and gave lots of input that I think we need to figure out how to take into consideration regarding where the location should be, as well as they've taken a lot of time to, Councilwoman Nice has provided opportunities for them to visit the other 2 developed wellness centers, and so they have some ideas about what they want included and what they'd like to see in the new facility, wherever it ends up being located. I did take the opportunity to reach out to Langston after the meeting yesterday. They weren't there yesterday for the conversation, but I did have a discussion with them, and we're going to follow up and go back to the seniors over at their current location and try to kind of ease their fears or allay their fears that they won't be involved, because we want to make sure that they are involved, and hopefully try to nail down where a location could be, or a choice of locations here in the next couple of months. Hopefully we can accomplish that. So I just wanted to make sure that they know that their voices were heard, and we're definitely interested in making sure that they stay involved in the process.
Thank you. Any other subcommittee reports? All right, then that brings us to item lucky 13. David?
Real quickly, I just want to remind everybody that work continues at the Draper Trail. Weather permitting, it's been a real struggle out there with all the rain we've had, but work continues at the trails. Work continues at the park. If you've driven by, it's really starting to look like a park. We're having some more trees delivered this week and next week. We still don't have but about 20% of the trees delivered, so it's really taken shape. That's pretty much it that hadn't been covered.
All right. Any other comments by the board? Staff? Carol, anything from you? Any citizens here that want to be heard? If not, is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned. Thank you.